I'm Renny Hartman, and I'm going to talk today about the play by Shakespeare, The Tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. One of his most famous plays, and supposedly Prince Hamlet is the part every actor wants to perform, and actually has been done by women. Sarah Bernhardt was a famous actress from the earlier parts of the 20th century. She did a famous Hamlet into great old age, and almost everybody else have done so. I have seen the play, I think, 10 or 12 times live. I saw Ray Fiennes in the 90s on Broadway. I saw Jude Law on Broadway. And Jude Law played the part the way I have been teaching Hamlet for many, many years. Often, older players play Macbeth or they play Hamlet, and they probably are meant to be much younger people, because in Hamlet he has a huge conflict. It's why he barely does anything in the play until the end of the play. But if he acted immediately, the play would be over. In the play, he's the Prince of Denmark. I'm going to guess Denmark is in the 800s or 900s, because in Act 4 he is sent to get tribute or taxes from Denmark, which had a colony in England, and they did have the Danelaw in England in the 800s and 900s, and then finally the Anglo-Saxons took over and drove them out. But there are two kings of England in the king line that are Danish, Canute and Hardicanute, and then they're replaced by Edward the First, or Edward the Pious, the first Edward, who's the first Anglo-Saxon. We actually, in British lineage, go back to Alfred the Great, who is a Wessex Anglo-Saxon king. So Hamlet is sent away from court at that time, so I don't think it's later than that. And he's a young man. He is at college at Wittenberg. I have no idea. Shakespeare was not good with geography. He put the Tempest on Bermuda in the Mediterranean. So where he would think Hamlet would go to college if he was a young person in Denmark several hundred years earlier, I have no idea. But supposedly, what has happened prior to the play opening is that King Hamlet, Prince Hamlet's father, has died. And instead of Prince Hamlet becoming the king, which if there was primogeniture, you would expect him to do so, his mother immediately marries King Hamlet's brother, Claudius, and he becomes king, possibly showing that the heritage line went through the female. And if they come out of the northern Celts or Teutonics, that might be true. Women were more powerful at that time than they ever were in Greece or Rome at the time. In Oedipus, when Oedipus arrives in Thebes after killing his father by mistake and defeating the Sphinx, he's accepted as a consort by Jocasta, who will turn out to be his mother. But then he becomes king because he married the queen. And evidently this is how this was working in Denmark at the play, and this is the way it's working in the action. And then in the first act, in the beginning, the guards have been seeing the ghost of King Hamlet up on the roof of Elsinore, the famous castle. And eventually Hamlet goes up and he does see his father. And his father explains that the way he died was not an accident or in his sleep. He was dozing in his orchard, and his brother came up and poured a poison in his ear. Now, I don't know whether that really works in real life or not. And he died unconfessed and removed of his sins by last rites. And so he is a demon ghost, condemned to walk the earth, and not go to the underworld, or not go to purgatory, or eventually to heaven, as he would have, theoretically. So he makes his son, Prince Hamlet, swear to kill Claudius. And Hamlet does so. He swears that he will. But the problem that he faces is that if he kills the so-called killer of his father, he is killing the king. He's also killing his blood uncle. He's also killing the man his mother, whom he loves entirely, just married 2 months after his father died. And he is at Elsinore now. He was due back at college. So he has to be fairly young. He's 15 or 16 or 17 years old. And unlike, say, Alexander the Great, he has not been in the army and already killed a couple people and brought the head home. Supposedly Alexander did that when he was 14. And he's a full general at 16 at the Battle of Corona in Thebes that wiped out Thebes so it was never rebuilt again. So Hamlet has to decide, did he really see his father's ghost, or was it a true demon? Was it a true manifestation of the devil that was trying to tempt Hamlet into mortal sin so that his soul would be condemned? He's not entirely sure what he should do. So he decides that he will play antic. He will be insane, because nobody pays any attention to the people that are a little wrong in the head. And that way he can go around everywhere at court and he can eavesdrop and people won't pay any attention to him. His parents, his mother and his stepfather, become very, very concerned about him. His mother is very concerned that he's mourning too much for his father. I can't say that still mourning after 2 months or 3 months or 4 months is exceptional, because we used to formally, if you go back to the Victorians, give mourning 2 years. Women wore black from September till Memorial Day, and they wore white in the summer. And the last one that ever did that officially was Jackie Kennedy after JFK was assassinated. She formally wore the black for the fall, winter, and into the spring, and wore the white in the summer for 2 full years. So the fact that Hamlet is still mourning is probably not exceptional. He may really be depressed in a way, because even though Shakespeare didn't have the words psychology or psychiatry, they hadn't been invented yet, he's very good at psychology. And it may very well be that Hamlet has some form of depression. You can see in some of his speeches, "I have lost all my mirth. I know the world is beautiful, the firmament is wonderful, but to me it is just vapor." These are the kinds of things that people today say. He can't do anything. He says he's lost his ability to do anything. His mother invites 2 of his classmates from Wittenberg to come, and they kind of give a comic relief, Guildenstern and Rosencrantz. And actually there is a play by Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and it just does their scenes where they go in and they're only there for seconds, and then they have to wait, so they're existential for the time period that before they come back and have a few words to say. But he says to them that he is playing insane, but he knows which way the wind is blowing, and there is a method to his madness. "I know a hawk from a handsaw, and there's a method to my madness." In the 3rd act, we have players come, a troupe of actors, and I'm sure this was a big deal. After all, people isolated in the castle, they see the same people over and over every day. Not very much happens. And the players come. They've been someplace else for a week or 2 weeks. They know all the gossip. They know any actual news that's running around from anywhere. They also bring people who are acrobats and tumblers and singers and music. And so that's a light spot. It's the only place in the play where Hamlet himself seems to be entertained. But he has the players mime out the death of his father, because he wants to see, will Claudius react? Will he show that he's guilty? And so they do the play they called the Death of Gonzago, and Hamlet calls it the Mousetrap, and actually Agatha Christie had a play that ran forever in London called The Mousetrap, an allusion to Hamlet. Hamlet has more allusions and quotable quotes than probably anything else of Shakespeare's. And that's also a reason everybody loves Hamlet. But Claudius does reveal himself. He stands up and he said, "Let me see light." And the whole court gets very upset. The play is over. I think the players figure they'll be beheaded or something. And Hamlet, the prince, is now thinking he's really going to kill Claudius. But Claudius goes to the chapel in the castle and prays. And so Hamlet won't kill him while he's praying, because his father didn't have that option. His father died in the orchard unshrived. So shortly after seeing his mother, Hamlet sees the tapestry on the wall move and stabs, thinking he's killing Claudius hiding there, but actually he's killing the chamberlain Polonius by mistake. Now Claudius is really upset. He's certain that Hamlet will act against him, and so that's how Hamlet gets sent away. Now, I had a former colleague that taught Hamlet to senior high school students and taught that Hamlet was away for 37 years. I don't know where that comes from. There's certainly no text that says so. He could have been away for a long period of time. I have no idea. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are sent along with him to make sure that he never comes back, but he finds a letter that they are taking to the colony in Denmark and how to deal with Hamlet according to King Claudius, and he turns it upside down and gets rid of Guildenstern and Rosencrantz, I keep dropping the name of. And in that time that he is away, Ophelia, who has an ungrateful part in the play, she's very young. She may have some kind of relationship with Hamlet. Some people have them have an affair. I don't think so. At the time, there was no birth control. There was no abortion. It was a big deal, especially if you were in the upper classes, to have an illegitimate pregnancy. That was a horrendous thing to have happen. And she has to be attractive and a little charming, but her biggest thing really is two parts where she has a huge argument with Hamlet in the third act, and that's where he tells her to get to a nunnery. And then she has a time where she is singing half porno songs because she's lost her mind, and she eventually drowns herself. And I've seen a number of people play Ophelia. Kate Winslet plays Ophelia not too bad in Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet, which he has set in Edwardian England. She gets treated by the water treatment, where they take fire hoses and spew water at her. But actually in the play, we don't see that it's not in the play that she's treated for insanity. So she has not a terrific part to play, and the best person I think that I've ever seen play Ophelia is Helen Bonham Carter in the 1990 version with Mel Gibson. I like the Mel Gibson because the enunciation is slow enough so that I think everybody can understand what Shakespeare is saying, the words that have been put into their mouth. But in that movie, the script is attributed to Zeffirelli based on Shakespeare, and he does move materials around. For instance, he has Mel Gibson as Prince Hamlet give the famous to be or not to be speech in his father's tomb, whereas actually he does the to be or not to be speech in the third act in between his argument with Ophelia and the players acting out his father's death. And to be or not to be is his decision. Should he act? Sometimes it's portrayed, should he die? There's a 1947 Laurence Olivier film of Hamlet that won Best Foreign Film Award at the Oscars. And he's on the roof of Elsinore looking at the sea below, and obviously means he's talking about his own death or suicide. And when Gibson does the speech in the tomb, it also gives that strong flavor that he's talking about his own death. But actually, Shakespeare's just very clever. It's to be or not to be. It's to act or not to act. Whether it's to live or not to live, die or not to die, you can put whatever wonderful interpretation in there that you want to put in there. Hamlet comes back, and Ophelia is dead. And because Ophelia is dead and Polonius the Chamberlain was killed, a young man, Laertes, who's been a friend of Prince Hamlet, he's been in France studying the arts of war, comes back and challenges Hamlet to a duel. So the play ends with a duel, and both Laertes and Hamlet die, and Claudius was planning to do away with Hamlet by poisoning a cup of wine that he would give him while he was playing, while he was fencing, also while he was having the duel. And at the end, I think by the time they're finished, there's 8 or 10 people that had parts in the play who are dead. And people that like to have slasher movies and things of that nature always use Hamlet as an example. Well, actually, in great art, they kill people all the time. Why can't we kill people on camera? I think Hamlet is a pleasure to read, kind of like Casablanca, which had an actual 6th writer who created all the lines that we all remember, like "Play it again, Sam," which is not really said. "Look, here's looking at you, kid. We'll always have Paris, the usual suspects." Hamlet has just tons of material like that. Shakespeare, I don't think, had any 6th writer adding them. He adds them himself. When I saw Hamlet with Jude Law on Broadway in New York City, when Hamlet is sarcastic, which he is, people were laughing. You thought you were at a comedy. That was very strange, and certainly took away the tragic idea that is behind the play. In the end, Hamlet loses his own life, and he says that his story should be told. So I think he really still comes from an oral tradition era where he doesn't expect anything to be written down. But a problem with the Zeffirelli film is that there are 3 revenge ideas in the play. There's the revenge of Prince Hamlet against his uncle for his father's death. There's the revenge of Laertes against Prince Hamlet for killing his father by mistake. And there's another theme that runs through, but not very much in Hamlet, but it is in there. King Hamlet, Prince Hamlet's father, had once had a war or battle with the King of Norway and defeated him. And so Prince Fortinbras, who comes from Norway and is supposedly going through Denmark to get at, I don't know, Sweden or something. Geography doesn't work. But he does want passage there, and he does come in the country. And at the end, he comes into the court and takes over Denmark. So his revenge also works. And he becomes king of Denmark. He actually didn't have to win a battle, because by that time, all the court is done in Denmark. And Horatio says to Hamlet, "Good night, sweet prince," which everybody thinks comes from Romeo and Juliet, and they use at funerals, but it is not Romeo speaking, or Juliet speaking to Romeo. It's not from Romeo and Juliet. It's from Hamlet. And I would say, see the Mel Gibson version, read the play, look at Hamlet in the modern sense, perhaps as a very anxious and depressed person. That fits him into this century perfectly. I'm sure that he was meant to be complex and not to be just antic and not paid attention to. He was smart. He was concerned. He was religious. He's unfortunately not good to women exactly. But I'm not sure that what happens with Ophelia is a problem because her father says to Ophelia, "Don't be friends with Prince Hamlet because he has to have a marriage of state, and you will not be considered in that position." So I don't think there's that much there, except that they're both young people. They both live in the castle. They know each other. And it just gives some minor distraction. And for someone to play Ophelia, it's a part that does not have great moments and does not offer great role playing by any means.